because like before this life, I believe that we kind of have an idea of how it's going to be, but we just forget. And one of the things that I personally feel like is when you see a lot of people now in terms of being like spiritual or online or even just content creation, a lot of times they've had, you know, either rough childhoods, they've had obstacles, you know, there's been like maybe trouble with family, maybe trouble with friends, etc. And that's just something that I've kind of found. And today I want to kind of have someone on and maybe learn more about them and their life and their path and what they feel is their, you know, their soul journey, their soul mission, their soul purpose, because I think each one of us have one. And then it just takes time for us to kind of either remember or kind of figure it out through either just reading stuff or, you know, watching other people talk about different topics. And, you know, and another reason I wanted to have Steven on today was because he makes music. And I think in this day and age where we are now, the kind of music that we listen to, it's very important because, you know, there'll be artists that, you know, they'll focus on, for example, drugs, you know, the other types of behaviors within the human experience that I feel are just getting promoted, that are meant to kind of keep us in a lower state of living and just in a lower vibration, just a lower way of like being in the world, engaging with others. And like because of this, we see different types of, you know, conflicts, different types of division. And Steven, from the music I've heard, and I know he's going to keep making, it's pretty much a positive message. It's chill. That's kind of how I'm going to introduce today's episode. So without further ado, here's Steven and the Moon. Hopefully the audio is good. All right.
To your earlier point, I'm happy to share this wild, whimsical journey I've been on. Every other, you know, spiritual person that I meet, like you said, has just the wildest stories and the craziest journey, and mine's been just that, 100%. And it ultimately led me to music, and to me, frequency is the future. I think the revolution is spiritual. I'm seeing it live and direct, and the fact that we can even have this conversation, man. You're on the other side of the country, and we have the technology to talk about spirituality. Like, we're in the future, man, you know? So I'm happy to be here. I'm a producer. I'm in my studio right now, and I'm an artist, a writer, engineer. You know, every hat I've had to wear it just to learn how to do it. And I make whatever people pay me for. I ran a great studio in Chicago called Private Stock. Shout out to those guys. Got to work with a ton of crazy people. Ended up working with some record labels and got to work on projects with Taylor Swift and Bon Iver and Leon Bridges, Khruangbin, man, just so many other people. Phoebe Bridgers, Muna. Actually did the Grammy presentation for Japanese Breakfast, and she ended up winning that Grammy. So just, you know, all kind of different things, and I've been lucky and blessed, and I've had to work for a lot of it. But in my own journey, I found these frequencies, man. That's my version of healing, and that's my offering to the world, and it's just what I love. It's what I enjoy, but it's what I would be doing no matter what. It's the only thing I can do. And I knew that that's what I was supposed to share from a young age. I've been lucky that way, I guess, or crazy that way, you know, depending on, you know, it's like, but I just knew that I was supposed to share something with the world. And I'm glad you came across my TikTok, and if you want to do a reading live on the air, we could do that, or whatever, hey, you know, whatever's clever.
I think, and that's something I want to talk to you about too, because like, for me personally, you know, after I left Christianity, it was like, maybe I was like a teenager, maybe like 17, 18, you know, rebellious, like, doesn't make sense, all this other stuff I would say. And I mean, a lot of it still feels like that, but I understand now it's more to it. Like, just religions change because of human,
Mm.
the way I say is
Yeah.
interception, right? Like football,
Yeah.
they intercept and change the
Yeah.
message
That's
and
exactly, yeah. Change the
and
words, change the names.
take
Yeah.
out stuff,
Yeah.
throw in stuff, and
Yeah.
just stuff like that. But I was always like skeptical about everything, right?
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh well, all this stuff I grew up believing, I just don't. So it's like, what do I believe, right?
Yeah.
So the one thing is like tarot, I'm still learning about it. But
Yeah.
when I hear like readings, I just usually what I hear is like take what resonates, and I think that's
Yeah.
like the way everyone should approach it, because like the person on the other side doesn't personally know you, but they're going to be saying things that might
Right.
resonate with you, right? So it's like,
Right.
could you kind of talk about how you got into that? Because I'm actually pretty like curious about that.
Yeah, so it's funny. I never intended to do anything with tarot. I didn't know anything about tarot. My dad's a pastor, so I'm a PK. So I was raised very, religious, but not in like a cult energy. Because man, religion has a lot of that energy. In fact, a lot of the readings that I do for folks are people coming from like religious trauma who are saying like, hey, I know I have this spiritual journey that I'm on, but religion kind of ruined it for me, and I've had similar experiences. I mean, I'd still deal with it in my life. My uncle's a pastor, my grandpa and great grandpa pastors, and they saw tarot and they're like, what's
The
going
devil.
on? But to me, it's the most direct relationship we can have with spirituality. And I also want to make a note. They're just cards, right? And I think whatever medium, whether it's music is music for a lot of people. It can be drawing, it can be art, it's whatever. It can be radio for you. Whatever puts you in that space, or whatever you do in your life that allows you to kind of have that meditative, receptive energy in your life, like it's no different than tarot. So I actually, what's nuts is I was dating someone, and she was coming and visiting me, and she would come for a few days, and then the next time it'd be a little bit longer, and then be a little bit longer, and finally I was like, what can I do so that you stay here a little bit longer? And she's a tarot reader and professional intuitive. Their name's Nick Border. They go by the Open Space, Embodied, and Oracle. And like, she was like, she's like, I have these readings. If I had a tarot deck, I could stay here and do my work from your house. And I was like, bet, let's go up to the little crystal shop right up the street. And this was 2020. I had just gone through a rebrand as an artist. I was calling myself Lightwork, and this was my symbol that I was using. So I'll describe it for the people who won't see it. It's two diamonds inside of each other, and there's a circle in the middle. And from my native heritage, it's called the Eye of the Medicine Man. So I used it as my music symbol because I was like, this is my commitment to use music as medicine, which is how I came across those frequencies and tones that you were talking about, which we hear in nature. We hear the wind blows at these certain frequencies, the birds chirp, bees' wings fly at these frequencies. It's like it's like organic sound, right? But that was my commitment. So I had this symbol, the Eye of the Medicine Man. I'd never seen it anywhere else. We go to this spiritual shop. Shout out New Age people. And Annie Truesdale is one of the most incredible intuitives I've ever met. Changed my life. But we were getting this deck. We're looking at all these decks. It's like 60 decks. I don't know anything about tarot. I'm in the music, singing bowls, drumming section, just, having a good time like a kid in a candy shop. And I finally go back. I'm like, did you find a deck that you want to use? And she's like, yeah, they have it, but it's the demo deck. They won't let me use it. So I opened the box, and the symbol that I have that is tattooed on me, that was the symbol for this new artistry that I was going to do, was on the back of the cards. And I'd never seen that anywhere in the world. To this day, I've never seen, like, that's the only, and I was like, okay. I was like, something is going on here. I was like, I don't know what we have to do. I went up to the manager at the shop. I was like, hey, we need this deck. It was the last one. They were on back order. We didn't know when they were gonna come back out again, and the lady was like not trying to sell it to me. I was like, hey, let me, like, she's like, because people touch them and they take the cards and I opened it. I was like, intuitively, I feel like nobody's touched this deck. And if you get a tarot deck, like there's books with them, you can tell when somebody's opened it. It's a big book. It's actually like, it's like this size, right? And you can tell because you would open it and the back gets bends, whatever. So she's like, no, I'm not going to sell it. I was like, if all the cards are there, will you sell it to them? One, I was like, help a player out. I'm trying to keep my my John around. Like, and she was like, okay, fine. She's like, if all the cards are here, I'll sell it to you. All the cards were there, sold it to us. And I was just happy because, this person I'm dating at the time, it's like, okay, cool. She's going to stay for another week. We're going to hang out. She can do work from my house. We're hanging out. Great. And I had no intentions, man. I had no intentions. And I was just curious. I was like, what do you do with these? And she was like, well, just pull a few. I pulled a few and she's like, what do you think this means? And I was like, I don't know. She's like, just look at it. What's your interpretation of it? And I looked at it and I was like, well, this person's doing that or whatever. And she's like, yeah, that's exactly. I was like, okay, well, there might be something to this. And that's how I got into tarot. And it's been just a way for me to share spirituality with other people. For me, it doesn't have a lot to do with the cards, but it is really interesting because a lot of the readings I do are for people, I don't know them from a can of paint or what's happening in their lives. And they're like, this is exactly what's going on. So it still trips me out. I don't care if you meet intuitives and they're like, oh, yeah, I don't. That's BS to me because I'm like, okay, this makes sense to you. And they're like, yeah, that's exactly what's going on. And I'm like, okay, something's happening. But that's my relationship to it. And again, I think a lot of people get caught in the cards. It's just the act of using your spirit to interpret or to, the lens through which you see what's going on around you.
Yeah, definitely. And
I'm happy to give you a reading if you want.
Oh, yeah, I'm down for that, definitely. But I was gonna say one quick thing about tarot that I read about, and like I'm still looking into. I'm always like researching, so it's like that's just I know it's gonna be life. I just never stop learning, right? That's why we're here. But one thing I read was like it's basically like about iterations, right? In terms of like mathematical, it's like from what I understand, and I could still look into this more, but it's like basically like picture, just the universe, spirit, energy itself. And like the messages that are meant to get to you, like by whoever's trying to communicate, right? Like one thing I've heard is either ancestors or guides, or even like, ascended masters, or even like just
that's real,
angels,
that's real
archangels, and all of that. Yeah. And like one thing I read was that if there's like a certain card that is like meant to come out, I guess it's also based on the person how they like shuffle the deck, but it's like the card that's meant to, it will based on like mathematical sequences of like how it's like shuffled, and then the one that pops out, right? It's like, and in terms of the iteration is how many times you do the shuffle, and then how the card ends up coming out. And like I could explain that better, but that's kind of like something how I've heard.
You're saying that there's like a there's an algorithm. To me, spirituality, spirit, when I say spirit, I'm just talking about the larger universal spirit.
Because it's all one.
It's all one, right? So somebody will say the Most High Spirit, and in Christianity they call it the Holy Spirit. In Buddhism they just call it, the Zen, just that state, right, of being connectedness. Like spirit is the algorithm that the universe works on, to me, and it behaves in certain ways, and a lot of it is through numbers and frequencies and signs and patterns and just these glitches, right, in the matrix. Like The glitches because there is a normal way that everything happens, but when spirit needs to get you what you need, the matrix glitches a little bit, or you keep seeing that same number, or you keep seeing birds, you keep seeing cardinals. However you allow the spirit to communicate with you is how it's going to communicate with you. Everything works on consent. Yeah. So yeah, to me, how tarot happened, I think a lot of people would be interested to learn that tarot is actually based on the natural world, but the Rider-Waite specifically, which is like the main deck that everybody sees, and they're actually based on biblical signs. So a lot of people will be surprised to know that, and in fact, it's no shade to anybody, but the most flack I've gotten from doing tarot is from Christians and just heavily judgmental folks who are like divination or whatever, and it's and my question is always like, what about the gift of prophecy, or what about the gift of, these are in the books that you read, right? And these are how we're even having these conversations. Never once did it say the seers who are referenced in Bible and Torah, the oracles, the prophets, they didn't go away. They never left. Yep. They never left. The Magi, even if we want to talk about just the context, we were raised religious, like the context of Christianity. They found Yahshua from a star, right? Like they found Yahshua from the signs and from spirit. The man was in a manger in the desert.
They found him, right?
And they found him in the darkness, bro. Like, what are we talking about? Like, they were following the signs. And to me, everybody has the same access point because it's spirit. And whatever tool you use, whatever tool is natural to you, is how you have that conversation. And I could go on about this all day, but tarot for me is just an easy way to have these conversations. So most people are visual, but we would have this conversation the same way that we're doing it now.
Definitely. And then because you mentioned basically how they found baby Jesus within the story, and like and using the stars, right? Like, yeah, like I had recently a guest that was talking to me about astrology, and like for me it's something that, like tarot, is like something I've been getting into, but I just want to keep learning more. And like for me it just boils down to like, okay, everything is what? Energy, frequency, vibration.
That's it.
Exactly. And like when you truly understand that as an individual, you say, okay, well, if you look at the stars, if you look at the universe itself, it's all really connected, right? And it's like one thing that my guest had said was like, is like, we're star people, right? We're star. Yeah. It's like yeah, yes.
That's the whole thing. I mean,
Well, I mean, besides the starseed thing, it's even more like we're made of the same. Let's just say elements.
Same stardust.
Same. Yeah, we're like Neil deGrasse Tyson, someone that said, "Oh, we're made of stardust," but he's more on the scientific side. So he's like he rejects anything outside of like within the whole world. But that's a whole different thing. But yeah, you get what I'm saying? Yeah. Like
Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's kind of a hater on that end because the first scientists were spiritualists. They were the intuitives. Isaac Newton, who discovered gravity, was a Christian mystic. he was in that book, learning all the esoteric, all the inner messages.
And Einstein too, I heard.
Einstein too, heavily spiritual. He said that the universe is spiritual. Yeah. Nikola Tesla, like that man was spiritual. He said he downloaded all of his ideas. He said
from where? From the universe.
From spirit, from the universe. Like they said, flocks and flocks and flocks of birds used to just fly to his apartment windows. Like that's spirit, So I think they're the same, and I think we're having a returning to that because it's all one. I think science and spirituality are just two sides and two languages for what's happening in the same world. They both exist in the same worlds, It's how we're having this conversation, and that to me is what I use my music for. It's sound is the only sense we can't turn off, which I think is really interesting. Even in all the books, is even science is the Big Bang.
Yeah,
It was a sound.
And this might be controversial to some, but like even with science, I would call it a religion. It's just a very advanced.
Oh, you were believing? You can't see gravity, bro. Come on, come on. But, I mean, I guess you can, but then it stops working sometimes. You can't see air, and we just have to believe that it's there. Like we can't see. Here's an interesting one, dude. You can't see multiplication naturally anywhere in the world. You can see addition, but you can't see 1,000 times 1,000 like in the world anywhere. So there's always the question of like, or maybe people aren't asking about it, but how do we get multiplication? And like I saw this video. The video is kind of wild. It was a Terrence Howard video. Just dive into it sometimes. He kind of went off the. I don't know if you saw that. He said he discovered some stuff, and really interesting.
I think he's been down some rabbit holes. Like
he's been down some rabbit holes. He's like a published mathematician, which is like great. Wow. Like he's dope. Like Oxford and like Cambridge, like have invited him for podcasts and talks, and so that's what he does outside of acting, and. He just asked this one question, which is kind of wild, and I never thought about it. He's like, multiplication is just addition. It's like our entire world system is based on multiplication. And multiplication is based on the idea that 1 times 1 is 1. But multiplication is addition, so we know that 1 plus 1 is 2. And there's nothing in right, like if somebody had a baby, right, is 1 times 1 is not just 1, it's like that's 3 people now, right? So I don't know, just something interesting. Just some, like we don't think about that, but all of multiplication is based on that, and our banking system is banked on all of that.
Oh, don't get me started on the banking system.
Yes, that's how they did it. They convinced us that
creating money out of thin air.
Yeah, is 1. And it's if I have $1, you have $1, we have $2. We don't just have $1, and that's how all of the banking system works, which is interesting. But yeah, man, I'm happy to nerd out about all of these things. And to your point, mathematics, I think, is how spirit shows up.
Definitely. One thing I truly believe now is like, well, for me, I want to keep learning more about mathematics. Yeah. And that's one thing I'm going to be studying here, but I understand for me is like it's the language of the universe, right? That's just one way. Like
and we can stars communicate with us through frequency,
and I want to communicate with ETs, so it's like that's down the line. But
I mean, they'll pull up, man. I'll tell you this: I've had some wild experiences. 3 or 4. Couldn't explain it. A buddy was with me. We saw the same thing. I moved to Chicago. I'm in the middle of a recording session, and this dude who's like a trapper, like he's like, the last person I would expect to have this kind of conversation, and he got kind of like serious. He's like, man, one night I saw this thing, man, and I was like, was it kind of like, he was like, yeah, it was, he was like, it looked like a star, but it was a little bit different. And we had the same exact experience, different parts of the country so I'll tell you this, and for anybody listening, meditation, that's they'll pull up, they'll let you know. Have you seen Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind?
I might have, but I was younger. But not recently.
No, well, it just came out recently. There was Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind, and that was like the movie. So this is a documentary. Check it out. This dude worked for the government. All these people worked for the government. Apparently, the government. Everybody's like, we'll believe it when the government comes out and tells us. They told us in 2001, and they just put a lot of stuff out and kind of buried it.
Yeah, just like in COVID.
Like they were letting us know. Yeah, they were letting us know. And, this guy comes out and he basically explains he came up with these protocols. and it's through meditation. These people from across the world, he created these protocols called the 5G protocols or 5D G5 protocols, something like that. 5 protocols through Stephen Greer, and man, they have all of this footage and all of these examples of these people having close encounters with extraterrestrial, extra dimensional intelligence. To me, they're just extra dimensional.
Yeah, definitely. It's just there's different dimensions, and we're in the physical reality, right? And but this is not
close
really
encounters
physical.
Of the
It's
fifth
just
kind.
huh?
Close encounters of the fifth kind. But go ahead.
Okay, I'll definitely check it out for sure.
Yeah.
No, but
I've had some of those experiences for sure too, and I even argue that. Not argue. I just believe, and I've seen. This is my own life, but that star that the Magi used to find Yahshua, the moving star that stopped and waited on them, I don't know. We probably would call that a UFO these days. Which makes you ask: are these UFOs that we're seeing angels? Do we think, are the stars angels? I don't know. Who knows, It's interesting.
Yeah, honestly, anything's possible. Nowadays, I don't rule anything out.
In the Bible, I think it's interesting. They mention Orion, Pleiades, and Arcturus specifically by name, which is like, out of all the things to mention in the Old Testament, those specific constellations, I think that's really...
And I heard there's even a story, I might get the book wrong, but I heard it's in Ezekiel, and I
saw a spaceship.
From way it's described, it's like, it could be interpreted a different way, but it's like, there was another person I saw, I forget, I'm not good with names, but there was this it was a German speaker. I don't know if you heard of him, Eric something, but he was basically talking about that story and how it's pretty much, he was talking about ETs and that it was a story where they take them and they had to measure everything out, right? Something like that. And it was just that was trippy because I never thought of it like that,
It's really interesting. And I mean, even if we just use biblical reference, because that's, how we grew up, every book, every major religion has the same stories and the same examples of these things that came out of the sky. Maybe we call them ETs, maybe they called them angels, in the Bible they called, previously had been fallen angels, right? Or these beings
Book
who
of
came
Enoch,
from
right?
the sky. Yeah, who came from the sky. That's angels, that's ETs, maybe they're one and the same. But Ezekiel's will, he describes this angel that he saw, which he was described in one of the archangels. Maybe these things that we're seeing are actually angels, or and that's just the name that they have for them, and now we call them UFOs or whatever. ETs. But they're really bright. They're really, really bright. They shine. They're there's patterns, there's frequency to them, and all the biblical stories, all of the, whether we're talking about Hindu, whatever it might be, when they come into contact with these beings, it's often really bright. They have to shield their eyes. That's how they describe angels. That's how we describe these UFOs. Maybe it's kind of
I think back then is just, the way I see it kind of too is it has to do with the human evolution over time. The human, let's just say the different cultures they had, experiences, what they knew, what they didn't know, the way they explained the world. And that just, even now that varies throughout. Because one thing I'll tell Christians now is hey, I don't think there's one only religion, right? It's because there's many truths, right? And there's truths everywhere. And because and then one thing I say is throughout the world is just humans trying to connect with what they feel is a higher power or whatever you want to call it, right? And I've been reading about the Tao, and that's another way of kind of describing it. And it's but it doesn't mean one is more true than the other, or one. And it's people get caught up too much in that, and I feel
they get caught up, man.
It's if we get past that as a human collective, we'll be able to be hey, I that's cool that you believe that. I believe this. Like, let's that's kind of where we're going, right? Like
Right.
you might call him Brahmin. I might call
Yeah.
him God. I might call him Allah. But
Yeah.
it's just every word's different. But it's about
Yeah.
that connection. It's about that cooperation. As a for
Yeah.
one, we're all here sharing this human experience, but we're
Yeah.
also here sharing this earth and Gaia,
Yeah.
and like, but
And the spiritual experience. Yeah, I love that you say that, man. This is a dope show, dude. This is your dope person, man.
thank you.
I'm really, truly glad we can have these conversations because that's a lot of the conversation I'm having in my own life. Like we're returning to working together, and to me, I believe every religion or practice of spirituality is just a different part of the same path, or it's a
Yeah.
different
It's
path
like branches.
toward the same
Tree.
toward
And
the
it's
same
just
same tree,
branches.
man. And we're supposed to be working together, right? Because I think each one has a different piece. For example, Islam mentions 3 or 4 specifically of the archangels by names
Yeah,
that
shout
aren't
out.
named in the Torah or in the Bible, and then the Bible mentions 3 or 4 that aren't mentioned anywhere else. So it's like, yo, okay, now we got
Connect the
7 or
dots.
8 names, and we're supposed to use all the information that we have. Also, I believe a lot of the ancient religions and a lot of the religions that are popular now, I think it's a combination of these ancient people had interactions with these higher beings, and these higher beings taught them their spiritual truths in order to access the most high, the whatever you want to call it. To Neil deGrasse Tyson, my argument for God and there being like a higher power is that the universe is conscious because we're conscious, and we can't we're conscious, so there's no way we come from something that's unconscious, right? It's like when people have a baby, it's not a tree, it's not a rabbit, it's right, like it's and that's where we come from. So we come from this universe, and I believe that the universe is conscious, and spirit is the algorithm that converts those messages or those signals or whatever it might be. So my belief is that each one of these different sects of people, like sectors of people, from back in the day, had these interactions a lot of times through meditation. Right? So I say it's like meditation is like the willingness to be open to receiving, and they came into contact with these angels or these higher beings who had a specific way to show them of connecting
Definitely.
with the greater spirit. And people didn't have technology back then. Maybe they had different technology, but the world wasn't connected, so they couldn't share ideas, right? They couldn't say, hey, this was working for me and this is working over here, and I learned from buddy down the way, this is how they were taught to get rain, and this is how they were, like, they didn't have that. So they just did what they had, right? And they weren't really sharing that and communicating that, and now we're at a point where we can actually realize what was happening and the interactions that were happening and the kind of beings and entities that they were interacting with. That wasn't God by himself, that was an angel or a being or a higher intelligence that was sent literally to help them.
Yep.
In Christianity, it's like ascended Master Yahshua, right? Like,
Definitely.
who is an ascended
Master
master
Jesus.
now, and it's
Yep.
like, and his main thing was
Steven, real
meditate
quick.
and
Sorry to interrupt, but my hour pretty much ends at 1, but I have someone going right after me, so I kind of had to end it here. But if you want to come on again, I'd love to have you back on, and we could definitely talk more. And like, I'm gonna edit in your music in between, or
Awesome.
like instead of what I played, I'll just play that, or either in the beginning too. But But I kind of had to end it here, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, I'll talk all day.
and I love talking to you, and we should
Likewise.
definitely do it again.
Yeah, anytime, man.
And real quick, shout out, let people know where they could find you, your music, all of that good stuff.
You found me on TikTok. So TikTok is Steven, Steven .the.moon. Instagram, Steven with the V .the.moon. Twitter, Steven_the.moon. I'm working on an album, and I would love to share it when it comes out and come on the show. And
definitely, it's
the first sound healing album of its kind ever. I've messed around and discovered some stuff, so I'd love to share it on your show. And I'll tell you this: you got an exclusive. The album's called Celestial.
Love it.
First sound healing album of its time, but it's like bangers. It's like some bops, It's not just like weird meditation music. And yeah, so hit me up on socials if y'all want a reading, or if you're interested in talking about tarot or astrology. You need some records made. I got you covered.
Definitely. Steven is your guy.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Oh, one last one. I'm sorry. One last
Go for it.
Shout out to Home Studios. We're producing some film and TV series. The first one we're doing is called Bad Things Happen in Philadelphia with Allen Iverson. And we hope to have less gun violence in the world. And, man, I would, love to talk to you more about it and, see how we can get some more of these spiritual messages into the world.
That sounds awesome.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thank you for being on. Don't hang up yet, but I'm going to just go back to music. Up next, I'm going to play as an outro.
Steven and the Moon. Steven and the Moon. Steven and the Moon.
Your heart's the portal, love's the key. Remember that you make it through any weather. The sun and the moon in the sky is clear. I see hope all around. Just gotta believe. Love is the key, and hope is possibility. The divine world is inside of you and me. The sun and the moon.